Blake Griffin, you soft ginger hair-colored Lindsay Lohan freckled-faced two-headed bitch, take your ass home, bitch.
We got robbed. We've been robbed. We said, now I do what I want. We said, now I do what I want. Let's go. Now I do what I want. Now I do what I want. Now I do what I want. Now I do what I want.
Get put in these weird situations, like getting traded to another team. Like you're just supposed to be okay with that? Like you put all your heart and soul into one team. This guy with the Clippers jersey, what I'm talking about. Put all your heart and soul into this team, and then one day they're like, no, we're good. Like, pack up your shit. You're going to Nashville. Like, just imagine, imagine if there was trades in relationships, and one day your wife is just like, honey, I kind of want to fuck Jason now. So I traded you to Sarah. I need you to pack your shit up and leave tonight. Oh, and also, you can't do anything about it because of that contract you signed when you were 21 years old. And you have to just be like, okay, well, no, that was great. I really had fun with my ex-wife. She was great. We had a lot of chemistry.
Oh, y'all thought I was going to leave you without my Blake Griffin take? Man, so big shout out to everybody that checked out that NBA Life episode 1. Man, the feedback has been amazing, man. I'm very excited, and I'm grateful that you guys gave it a shot and are enjoying it. But yeah, man, I thought that was hilarious. The internet went nuts. Again, I don't take credit for any of those memes and stuff like that. I just put a compilation of it together. But I know you guys were like, Alk, man, what's your take on it? What's your take on it? Now, in my pod, I said, man, the Clippers, maybe they're going to stand pat because DeMarcus Cousins went down and they could possibly get the 8th seed. Obviously, that theory went right out the window with this trade. My first take was like, damn, Detroit's desperate. Detroit's desperate. And they are coming off like 7 or 8 losses in a row. And it's, when Blake Griffin came out of Oklahoma, I remember seeing him dive into, the press table. And he was just not usually high risers like that are not built like Blake Griffin, right? They're usually thinner. And Blake Griffin's built like a football player, but then he elevated and then he played with this reckless abandon. And I just said to myself, man, this ain't going to last long. This ain't going to last long, right? And, to his credit, he has adjusted his game. He plays on the perimeter. His handles are underrated, right? And he's found that mid-range jumper, even shooting threes. But he's a guy that's always going to be hurt. He's always going to be hurt, right? And so I just think it's interesting that Jerry West comes on board, I believe somewhere around June 15th, and then within 10 days, Blake Griffin has this massive contract extension. And knowing from what I know about Jerry West and how methodical he is, I think he planned to trade Blake Griffin all along. I think he'd seen enough of Blake Griffin at this point in his career that he knew didn't want to keep him, but he also knew that he could be traded even with a massive contract extension. Chris Paul fled the coop, obviously. But for Detroit, they've lost 8 in a row. But I read this as well, and I didn't take this into consideration. There's a brand new arena there in downtown Detroit, and they have one of the worst attendances in the league. So this was more for Detroit as a desperation move, one, to fill seats, and they're underachieving in an Eastern Conference where the door is more open, right? But, I shout out to my guy on Patreon. They asked me, I said, Drummond and Blake Griffin, and this is with whom you want to place your fate. Jay-Z, 0 for 8 at the Grammys. But, both of these guys, I think I don't trust when the game's on the line, right? They're both immense talents, great athletes, but I question both of their competitive juices a little bit. Like, how bad do they really want it? Now you pair them in Detroit. So I'm sure they'll make the playoffs now. Maybe we'll see. But the Clippers, here's the interesting thing about the Clippers is they're still shopping Lou Williams and DeAndre Jordan. It's a complete blow up. And the report is Jerry West believes he can bring LeBron James to the Clippers. And here's the thing with that. There's a couple things that cross my mind. One, does that mean that you won't trade DeAndre or Lou to Cleveland? Meaning like, I don't want to help them, and maybe let's say it helps them and helps convince LeBron to stay in Cleveland. So maybe Cleveland can't get any of these assets. And then 2, you have to have another piece. Now, I guess what the thinking would be is Paul George and LeBron. Paul wants to be in LA. So there's 2. But that's still not enough, man. You guys forget, I say you guys, maybe you don't, but bringing, he was the big ace up the sleeve as far as Kevin Durant coming to Golden State, right? In hindsight, talking to KD, he was like, yeah, man, I got that call from Jerry West, and that meant a lot, in the 24 hours where he was making his decision. And I'm sure that carried a lot of weight. But behind Jerry West's phone call were 3 other all-star potential Hall of Fame players who had already won a championship. Jerry West can make that phone call to LeBron and make that phone call to Paul George, but what else is behind Jerry West? You have an owner that doesn't really appear to know what he's doing. That's why he's got West there, but, he seems eccentric. And then Doc Rivers, his reputation has been just run through the mill, right? Everybody, you got Matt Barnes on Twitter talking shit, and Doc Rivers, it looks like he's going to be out anyway. So I just don't know what the other, you have to have more, especially in the Western Conference and in the Pacific Division. So they're going to trade off these assets. They've got to get a top 5 draft pick or one of these guys that's projected to be a superstar or a young talent to go along with, or to convince, I think, Paul George and LeBron James to maybe consider the Los Angeles Clippers. But again, what do you do? Do you trade anything to Cleveland? Everybody says, okay, go get that Cleveland draft pick from Brooklyn, right? But that's a double-edged sword, because all of a sudden you're helping Cleveland this year. What if LeBron and they catch fire and they win the championship and LeBron's like, man, I ain't leaving Cleveland. We just won. So I don't know what they do with that, but it's going to be interesting. And I hope, you usually see with the trade deadline, everybody's waiting for one big move and then it inspires everybody else to make trades. So I think it's going to start popping off, man. This is going to be fun. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.